Coming up next is caller number 12. Caller number 12, you're on with Jovan. Are you here to debate?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Can I get your name, age, and pronouns, please?
Yeah, it's I'm sorry, got a little bit of a hoarse throat. It's John, and 36, and I guess he, him.
Okay. And John, what were you calling from the list to debate about?
Thank you, Bill.
Well, your top prompt there, trans women and trans men are men and women.
Yep, what about it?
I don't really understand that. I mean, I agree that trans men and trans women exist, you know. They are people, just like everybody else. They're trans, opposite whatever their gender is. But as far as men and women go, I mean, I hate to do the whole cliche of, you know, what is a woman, but in my definition, I would say, you know, the first characteristic and most important would be can get pregnant. Second would be, you know, your genetics, you know, obviously XY, XX chromosome, and I know that's, you know, contended with, what about Klinefelter syndrome? What about, you know, XXYY, all that. But, you know, I do believe that trans people exist. You know, I know a few, you know, I treat them, you know, the way they want to be treated. You know, I treat them with respect. But as far as to say that they're men and women and there's no distinction there, I think it's just, I just never understood that.
Okay, so sure, there's a lot to unpack there. First and foremost, you don't believe they're men and women? I'll tell you why I do. I believe men and women are sociological terms that we use to denote specific roles in society, oftentimes based around phenotypic attributes, not biological attributes.
Phenotypic being you know, characteristics like personality, your outward expression,
visible traits. Like so yeah, things like that, as well as behavioral traits as well. I believe trans men and women fit neatly into this, especially with our understanding of sociology, our understanding of neurobiology. When we look at the way trans people's brains, when we look at the way that their brain interprets their own gender and their own identity, it's in the same way that a cisgender person who their cisgender counterparts would. Secondly, I believe that when you make a claim that there is some tie between men and women to some biological trait, you're not going to be able to list specific necessary conditions that don't have exceptions. And in order to make the category exclusionary based on
exceptions make the rule in a sense, though.
No, not in categorization. So there's two types of categorization. Nope, not in categorization. When we look at categorization, there's two types. You can either have necessary categorization or exclusionary categorization, or you can have cluster categorization. Cluster categories can't exclude something. Exclusionary categories can. So if you're saying trans women cannot be women, this would be an exclusionary category. And I think there are ways to make the argument that woman is an exclusionary category, but it wouldn't be based on any biological trait. There are 0 biological traits that would make this exclusionary. And an exclusionary category has to have a necessary condition or conditions with 0 exceptions.
Okay, so here's my problem with that. If you're saying that categorization is impossible at that point, then why
Not
use
impossible.
man and woman anyway? How would you, you know, without exceptions to the rule and without having definitive categorization, what's the point in even saying man and woman?
So I think there are ways to categorize with exclusionary categories. They just wouldn't be tied to biology. So the way I would do it is I would say woman, for example, is anyone whose gender identity aligns with their personal schema on the female sex. This would include everybody that's a woman and exclude everybody that's a man, and there are 0 exceptions in this. If you're going to tell me that it...
I'll give you a hypothetical. If let's say a 48-year-old man, you know, realizes that, you know, he's had a gender identity disorder his whole life, you know, and he decides to, you know, go full throttle. You know, I'm going to start on hormones. I'm going to get the surgery. This person has lived their whole life as a man, had all the benefits of living as a man in society, had his whole life experience as being a male. uh, what would link him or identify him or allow him to
Her.
claim the title of being a woman?
Yep. So it's what I
Other
said. It would be
other
her.
other than phenotypical, other than your phenotypical expression,
It
which in
would be
my eyes,
her.
when you use that term, you're referring to
Uh-huh.
personality, the clothes you wear, the way you talk, the inflection of your
Phenotypic would
voice.
be outward expression. What would link her to being a woman is she would have a gender identity that aligns with her personal schema on the female sex. If
So
she
so
has
she is
this
she is she
trait,
is just as much a woman as a cis woman.
yep, they're both women. They're different types of women, but they're both women.
You see, that's
Woman
you
is
still
woman is an
you still
umbrella
haven't.
term.
Okay, go ahead.
Woman
Go
is an
ahead.
umbrella term. And then cis and trans would be adjectives we add on to describe the type of woman that they are. So a lot of
Yeah,
different words
that
can
would be
fit under the woman umbrella.
a trans woman.
Yep, trans women. Trans is an adjective we put in front of
Yes,
women.
yes,
Cis is
yes.
an adjective we put in front of women. Tall is an adjective we put in front of women. Bald sometimes gets put in front of women. Short gets put in front of women. Black, white. We have a lot of different words that are adjectives that we place in front of the word woman to denote the type of woman that they are. Trans women
Exactly.
are a type of woman. They're just a type of woman whose gender identity doesn't align with their sex that they were observed at birth. That's all. That's quite
I
literally
mean,
it.
I
Nobody's
understand that's the
saying,
argument. That's
nobody's
been the
making a
argument.
claim that trans women and cis women are 100% identical. No one's making that claim. We're just saying that they're both women. Just like I would never claim black women and white women are absolutely identical, or that tall women and short women are absolutely identical. We're just saying they are
Yeah.
both women. Women is the overarching category. But again, if
Okay.
you're claiming that it is exclusionary
So
based on
I can use the
biology,
word. I can use the term trans woman
why couldn't you?
as a descriptor. You know.
It does describe who they are, yes.
Okay, so I guess we could say we don't even agree to disagree. I can that term is acceptable.
Well, the
A trans
problem is
woman.
you think that calling them trans women defeats the fact that they are women. That's the problem. You don't consider trans an adjective, which is all it is. The
Oh no,
noun is still
I do consider it an adjective, but when you put it on woman, well, yeah, I see what you mean. I guess I see what you mean.
the noun is
But
still woman.
well, I guess that's right. I mean, I understand. I would call them trans. The second part of that, the noun being woman, I would use that as the context of that's what they're portraying as, because they're not the original thing. They are a trans.
But again, John, if you're claiming that in order to be a woman, you must possess some biological trait, you would have to tell me what that biological trait is. And if you're claiming that the category is exclusionary, that means there can
Sure,
be no exceptions here. So what is the
there's
trait?
multiple biological traits.
So, well, okay, if you're saying there's multiple necessary traits, that's fine. What are they?
Sure, I named two of them in the beginning here. Having a uterus, having a different, skeletal bone structure, having just as deep down as your DNA. You know, it's you're able to tell male and female at the genetic level, at a microscopic level.
Okay.
I mean,
So
and then you brought up the outliers.
John.
You know?
John, hold on.
Okay.
When
Good.
we're making a
I'm good.
claim that a category is exclusionary and we're placing a necessary condition, necessary conditions can have zero exceptions. If
Yeah,
I
I
were
know.
to
I remember you said that, but are
Great.
all categories exclusionary?
No, there's also cluster categorization, but cluster categorization doesn't give us exclusionary things. So you can't say based on cluster categorization that, or family, it's also called family categorization. You can't say that something can't be this because it's not meeting a certain trait. A really good example of this, so that to give you, is think of a game. Just think of the category game. Game isn't an exclusionary category. It would be a cluster category because there is no
there's
one
multiple
trait.
Games,
There's no one
multiple
trait
different
that
types of
all
games.
games possess, right? There's no one single trait that all games possess. There's going to be a litany of different traits of what a game is.
Okay, but when virtually all of a specific thing do portray that, when there are outliers, there's explanation for those outliers.
Doesn't matter the explanation.
Such as genetic disorders, such as Klinefelter syndrome.
They break the rule. A necessary condition is necessary. It has to have zero exceptions. It has to. If I tell you, hey, in order to come into my house, it is necessary you wear a red shirt, and I let someone in who's wearing a blue shirt, then it was not necessary to wear a red shirt to come into my house.
Okay. Well, but using that language, okay, as far as you use the term family categorization, okay, what makes a tree and a bush a bush? Is there a cutoff line? Is there a, can I call certain things bush or never be able to call them a bush because they have certain characteristics as opposed to a tree
I
or
don't
a
know
fern or a sapling?
scientifically the classification of when something becomes a tree to a bush, but I think when we look at that, there is almost no difference, and it kind of becomes like a subjective height thing, right? It kind of
Okay.
becomes
Well,
a thing about.
obviously, I'm not calling on us to figure out what a tree is a bush, but I mean, I'm trying to think of a different way to put this. Okay. Do you think there's any type of third sex other than male or female? Not gender, just sex.
In the human species, I don't believe in I'm not somebody who believes in a third sex. I believe that
Nobody
sex
does.
is on a no. There are some people that do, but I'm not one of
Well,
them.
but
I believe
it's never
sex
been,
is. Hold on,
you
hold
know.
on. You asked me what I
Okay, good.
believe, not what might be
Good.
true, not any of this. I believe sex is on a bimodal distribution model. I think that you have two extremes being male and female, and then you have a litany of conditions that
spectrum
can
model.
affect those that can place you anywhere on that bimodal distribution.
Okay. Do you believe that there's a distinguishing line, a 50% line in that spectrum somewhere, that when you cross over to one side or the other, you can make a categorization?
Possibly. I don't know what that thing would
Okay.
be.
Then there would have to be.
I think it's
categorization
probably
of male and
something
female
that
at
doesn't
some point.
exist. I think it's probably something that we've not seen in humans. So we've not seen a human who, for instance, has both genetic material of male and female that can
Oh no, I'm
impregnate
not talking
themselves
about
and
the
stuff
genetic
like that.
material. I'm talking about, you said male and female. You don't consider it a binary. It's a spectrum.
When I say
imagine you have
genetic material, I just mean gametes.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. But if it is a spectrum, and let's imagine it as almost like a gas gauge. You got empty and full. Is there a point on that gas gauge where once you cross the line, you could be categorized as one of the two on the end of the spectrum?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, then you could categorize and you could classify male and female.
Yeah, I think male and female are work under familial classification, not exclusionary classification.
Yeah, like imagine you have a man who doesn't identify as non-binary, or he's not transgender. He's a feminine man. He doesn't necessarily dress feminine, but slightly feminine, and maybe he's a little bit androgynous. You can't really tell. But he says, "I am a man." I am a man. Are we just going off what he's telling us, or are we going off what he would be?
When it comes to categories like man and woman, it is inherently a self-identification thing because they're internal classifications. If we're looking at like sex, male and female, those would be some level of external. But
yeah, that's
gender
what I mean.
gender is an internal classification. So I can only know someone's gender for sure if they tell me.
Well, no, that's why I'm saying male and female. I'm not saying
male and female we can have some level of exterior classification on, because we know that when it comes to sex, there are 5 different traits that we assign to sex. It's internal and external genitalia, gonads, hormone production, chromosomes, and I might be forgetting one, or internal and external are set as 2 different ones. But yeah, we can see those things typically, whether we're karyotyping or whatever we're doing, we can see those things, so we can make an external classification on sex based on that.
But what trumps that is the the personal identification of the person.
I don't think it trumps it. I look at gender and sex as two different things. Like, I don't personally have a need to know someone's sex in my daily interactions with them. It doesn't do any.
Well,
It
no,
doesn't
of
like.
course not. Of course
But
not.
gender,
But
I tend to have a use for because it can refer to. It can like help me with referring to that person. It can help me know a little bit more about that person. But I don't have a real use for like
and
sex differentials.
and yeah, I understand that. But the things you call gender, that is the expression. That's the what I'm wearing, my inflection, my tone of voice, my presentation. That's what you consider gender.
Well,
Personality, inflection, outward manifestation of appearance. That's what you consider the gender spectrum.
Well, the way I define gender is just the cultural and social differences between the sexes in relation to like different traits, whether those traits are behavioral, phenotypical, psychological, things like that. Whereas sex
Yeah, that's
would
basically what I
be
said. Yeah.
where sex would be the biological makeup of reproduction. So yeah, I look at gender as like a whole
Okay.
litany
See,
of social
could you
distinctions.
break that down as in the simplest terms? If you were to use three words, that would be what: personality, outward appearance. I don't know if you can use a third word.
I don't know that I'd use the phrase personality. I would use more if you're telling me to describe gender using three words, I mean, I'd more use social traits, I guess.
Okay, and those would be in
I mean,
tone of voice.
the list of what those would be is like so like it's like super long. Like I don't
Yeah,
there's
obviously.
hundreds of
But
them. Yeah.
okay, I get what you're saying, but I mean, I'm conceding that there are limitless spectrums if you're going to consider gender those things. There's limitless, there's bountiful amounts of that.
Well, yeah,
But
spectrums would in kind of be limitless because you could fall anywhere on the spectrum, and as long as you keep increasing the spectrum.
But
Yeah.
I would still, like I said, we can move on to the second point if you want here soon. But so what I would still say would be, underneath that, prism of light, or gas gauge, if you want to picture it that way, just as a visualization. Below that, you would have, something in the tank measuring, and you would have a breaking point, whether it be 50%. You move past 50%, you're one thing. You move past 50%, you're the other thing. When it comes to, the outward characterization, like the gender. But in the sense that if you had a woman, a biological woman who presented as male, and even people couldn't tell, nobody could tell. If she was, I'm just going to use the term put under a microscope and tested, she would still break into one of those categories, male or female, or one of those other outer outliers, like a genetic disorder or.
Yeah, but I'm not really worried about whether they fit into a biological category of male or female. I'm not really worried about that.
I'm not either. Like in my daily life, I'm not either. But I'm just saying for purposes of, just categorization, and.
But no, but that's
just,
what I'm saying. Like, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a scientist, so like I could care. Like, those are really the only two times where I think where we should be worried, like hardcore worried about whether you're male or female. Almost every other instance in society, we're gearing things around the social aspect of gender rather than we are the biological aspect of sex.
Okay, you want to move on to the second topic here?
If you want to, sure.
It's up to you. We could. Okay, it was gender-affirming care for minors. Okay, as far as gender-affirming care, do you mean psychological care or like a therapy or anything like that, like a psychological type of care or affirmation from the parents maybe? Like, what would you classify that for a child?
When I say gender-affirming care, and we're talking about children, I mean whatever care is necessary to treat that child's gender dysphoria, with a caveat of making sure the care is in alignment with pubertal development.
Okay, I get what you're saying. So no surgeries for a minor, no.
I think that like top surgery is fine around 15, 16 because that's when the breast tissue typically is fully developed. And I think bottom surgery is fine between like 17 and 18. If you want to push it to 18, I don't really care one way or another. But that's around the time where I'd say the development has hit a good portion for those.
Okay. I wouldn't be able to get behind that. The only type of gender affirming care that the term affirming, most people, when most people hear that, they think of, the term affirmation. They think of, supportiveness or agreement in the child. They're not going to fight the child, on how they want to present. I don't really see that as medical intervention as far as, hormone therapy or surgical intervention. And I would imagine, if I was to push it to the extreme, I'd say, 21 would be the age where, or if you had a waiver, if you were like in your 20, we'll say, the surgery would be fine. But as far as that, as far as like 14 and 15-year-olds, I just don't think that they have I just don't think you can have the understanding of the repercussions of that at 15. Just knowing myself at 15.
But hold on. What this is operating on a lot of assumptions. The assumptions being that there's like this mass amount of harm that's due, and that they can't interpret the harm as 15-year-olds. But even if I'm to grant you that there are side effects, and those side effects can be major, even if I'm to grant that, they're not the ones making this decision. They're not making it in a vacuum. Their parents are there. They have doctors who are leading the way. They have a team of medical professionals behind them. So like, yeah, they might not be able to consent to certain medical care, but in our country, at least, which I assume you're in America. I guess you could be in a different country, but in America,
No, I'm in Ohio.
Okay, so not America. So I'll tell you what happens in America. In America, after the age of 14, you are allowed to medically assent to medical treatment, which means that doctors have to inform you of what's going on, and they can take your objections into play if you're based on, like, if your parents wanted to do something.
Yeah, medical treatment, interventions, life-saving interventions. But
it's not just life-saving. It's any medical treatment.
Cosmetic surgery and, gender care, and you said there's no harm. I
didn't say there's no harm. I didn't say there's no harm.
I'm not saying mass amounts of people are regretting their surgeries, but there are people that do.
Yep, the regret rate currently for gender affirming care for the minor population sits at like around 1%. So yes, I agree that there are people that regret their their affirming care, but I'm not punishing 99% of the population because 1% of the population regrets it.
Well,
on the high end, we could say 3%, but like 1%.
How long has this been going on in the United States as far as gender affirming care, like puberty blockers and intervention surgeries? Like, how long has that been going on? If you were to, in mass, I'm not talking about the occasional one in the 80s and 90s.
We've been using this pretty consistently. At least 15 plus years.
Is that long enough to find really? Do they follow up with everybody?
Yes, but also yes, that is long enough. But even when we look past the minor population, we look at the adult population. We have like 50 years of studies in that to show us a regret rate of bottom surgery that sits at about 2.2%. Right.
Well, and also any surgery when you're put under, and especially something where you're under the knife, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. Every surgery has, a danger to it, even if it's something benign. A tonsillectomy has a 2% mortality rate.
Yeah, but typically per medical guidelines in the United States, you're not able to get bottom surgery until you're 18.
Okay, but even if you had, breast reduction or top surgery, you're still going under the knife. They're cutting into your flesh. There's, I don't know if you can look, we can look
But we have girls, we have like 15, 16-year-old girls who get nose jobs. Right? Like, their parents buy them nose jobs.
I don't agree with that either. I don't agree with that either.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I don't really see an issue, right? Like, as long as you are made aware of the risks, right? And parents and the child and the doctors can have a risk benefit conversation, then I don't see an issue here. I think when we look at the data, it appears to be, and obviously if a study comes out tomorrow that's like a really well done study that shows me wrong, cool. I haven't seen any studies like these yet. But when we look at the data currently that we have, it shows that patients who receive medical affirming care when it is necessary and when they need it have better quality of life outcomes overall. So
in the course of the 10 or 15 years that we've been doing this.
Well,
That's what it showed.
in if we're looking at kids, we have 7-year studies, but this is like a lot longer than what we'd be looking at for like quality of life studies. We'd be looking at for a quality of life study, you're looking at anywhere between 24 and 32 months is what you want for like a quality of life or a mental health thing, right? So when I'm looking in that regard, I'm seeing 7-year studies showing a higher quality of life. That's above and beyond what we need to label these.
Yeah. Okay. A quick question for you, though, real quick. A little bit ago, we were talking about the. You said if 1% of you said the studies show that 1%, have regrets and they wish they hadn't gone through the surgery. What percentage of the population would you say identifies as trans in the United States, at least?
It's anywhere between 1
Maybe
to
2?
3%, give or take.
Okay. So a second ago, you were willing to kind of write off that 1%, so the 99%, can do their thing. You know what I mean? But people can make the same argument. Well, trans people make up between 1 and 2% of the populations. Why do we have to do this anyway? Just kind of wipe it off. Let's not have them do any surgeries, which I don't agree with. I believe people.
I don't think this maps on. This doesn't map on to the argument we were having though, because I'm saying why should I say 99% of people aren't allowed to do something because 1% of people who do it experience negative side effects.
Well, it's not people, it's kids. It's kids. It's 99% of kids don't regret it.
Same question, right?
Why would I just say
bar 99% of kids from doing something when only 1% of the kids who do it face any sort of regret?
Okay, but what would be wrong with the puberty blockers until you're of age for any type of surgery? Would that be like a good...
Well, it would just be a really long time to be on them. And like the longer you're on any medication, like the more likelihood something's going to happen. Right?
Yeah. Let's say somebody's put on, at 15 or 16 years old.
It would be too late to be on puberty blockers at 15 or 16. It would be too late.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. No, what I meant to say was, let's say somebody's getting a surgery at 15 or 16 years old, right? They're getting a top surgery. And they were put on puberty blockers at the age before that. Let's say 12. It depends. Some people go through puberty at 10. My son is 12, and he literally shot up in 6 months. He's got a mustache now. And so let's say you put them on at that age of 10, 4 or 5 years. And then once they hit that age, 16 or 17, they get the surgery. What would be wrong with that?
Well, nothing. We've already told you that like most surgical interventions don't happen until you're that age anyway. I've already said that.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm wording this the wrong way. Hold on. Okay.
Hold on. Let me just give you. Wait.
Be...
Let me just give you. Typically, when you are trans, you go on puberty blockers. When you start puberty, this can be anywhere from 10 to 12. You're on those for 12 to 24 months. After you're done with puberty blockers, after you've made the decision, you go on HRT, and typically you're on HRT for life, give or take. And then surgical interventions usually aren't done until you're around age 18 anyway. Some people can get top surgery sooner if it's decided by their team that they need it. But like typically the soonest you're going to get it is 15 because we typically want to let the breast tissue or the tissue fully develop. But usually if you're going on top surgery, it's because you weren't put on HRT, right? So
the HRT starts at like 13 years old then. If the puberty blockers start at puberty.
It depends on the person, but HRT can start as early as yes.
I don't know about that, man. That's so you're saying there's no kids, no prepubescent kids. Only 1% of them are regretting this as they become adults.
Yeah, hold on. I'll give you the actual information from the study. It was a 6-year longitudinal study. Okay, so far it's the most thorough study of its kind. When we looked at
where is the study from? Through?
This one was done. Let me pull the entire study. It's called Re-Identification with Birth Registered Sex in a Western Australian Pediatric Gender Clinic Cohort. When we looked at the numbers, what we found here is that of the children who were receiving gender clinic referrals, 93.1% of them desisted prior to getting any sort of drugs, so that they determined they weren't trans before anything was prescribed. Of the children prescribed puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy, only 1% of them desisted after that.
That's kind of strange. That makes
Why
no
is it
sense.
strange?
Or these like that the kids magically decide they don't want it, and then sometimes there's a magic line that when you get the pill, nobody regrets it after that.
It's not a magic line. It's just some people realize like, hey, this isn't for
I
me.
said the pills are almost like the magic stepping point.
Nope. 1% of people realized it wasn't for them. The rest did. The rest of the people who took it.
And how many realized it wasn't for them before they started that?
93.1% of people. Who stopped? Not 93. Let me phrase this. There were 552 people in this study. 27 of them desisted before. So only 27 of them even desisted at all. Of that 27, only 2 desisted after they were given hormones. And that comes out to 93.1% desistant cases before drugs,
and that's within 2 years after they haven't desisted.
This is between 6 years of getting referred to the clinic. They looked between getting referred and they looked up to 6 years after the referrals.
And this is in one clinic. And where was this study done at in the United States?
This was not one clinic. This was it was one clinic. This was done in Australia. Again, it's re-identification with birth, registered sex, in a Western Australian pediatric gender clinic cohort. But even the studies we have in the U.S. are aligning with these same numbers.
Well, there's not that many clinics in the United States that do this. I mean, there's I think there's maybe like 8 to 12 of them. I was reading a study yesterday that actually do the on-site gender affirming surgeries, and then there's another maybe dozen to 2 dozen that do HRT and puberty blockers. But most people are referred to one of these few dozen clinics around the country. It's not like something I can go down to my local St. Elizabeth's to get done.
I mean, most people are doing it through their primary care physicians in the U.S.
Huh? Most people?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Most people are going to
just a family
clinic.
MD.
Yeah, that's you go to your primary care. Typically, your primary care will get you in contact with a therapist who may be out of this private practice or from a hospital or whatever. They may get you in contact with an endocrinologist, but like it's rare that you're going to a specific clinic. That's rare.
Well, I mean, as far as the surgeries go, yeah.
Yes, but I don't know why we keep talking about. I don't know why we keep talking about the surgeries. TBH.
I don't know. I just think I don't know. And when you make it sound like it's no big deal, it's just healthcare. When a child, I consider anybody under 18 a child. I considered myself a child, maybe not at 18, but
It's not me saying it's just healthcare. It's me saying that
there's plenty of studies.
Hold on.
I got 3 or 4 studies that can sway you the other way. Studies.
Which study?
A dime a dozen.
Which study?
Hold on a second. I'm outside on my home phone. I can. Do you have an email? I can email it to you. You can look at it yourself.
Sure. I just want to let you know. I spend not my entire day. If I'm not on here or doing something, I'm spending my day reading these studies you're talking about, and not a single study that I've seen to counter this either A, ever says what the person I'm talking to says it says, or B, actually is done with like relevant data on the population that we're studying. So if you want to send something to me, my email is business@jovanbradley.com. You can send any study you want there. And I will read it. And if you want to call back after you send that and I get a chance to read it, you can call back and we can have this conversation again.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. It was good talking to you. I was just on the computer, and I just happened upon your thing. Every once in a while, a live video will pop up in my feed, and I just figured I'd call in. I had an hour to burn, so it's good talking to you, man.
No problem.
All right, take it easy.
Okay. Hey, thank you all for watching this video. If you don't know me, I'm Jovan Bradley. I'm a leftist content creator who does debates, political commentary, gaming, and more. If this is your first video, thanks for sticking to the end, and I hope you subscribe. I post videos daily, and there are hundreds of past debates on my page for you to enjoy. Thank you to all of my YouTube members. Your continued support helps me create as much as I can. Consider joining. A membership starts at $2.99 and gets you access to our community Discord, early access to videos, and more. Shout out to my Tier 4 members, Ovaltine, Sylvia Snow, Bamji, Emery Imogene, Ayla Ursus, Zurith Moonpaw, Vel, Kelsey K, Jake Gorshander, Matthew Holloway, Kazim, Vampy, Yemye, and Dragon Nerd. Your continued support goes a long way to me continuing the fight for equity, justice, and education. Thank you again for watching.